The topic of the class, or the topic of this series, we're doing a series now that we're going to go from now through the month of Elul till Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and then one last class after Yom Kippur before Sukkot. So we're going to be really going in depth, diving in depth into this. Really, we talk about, there's people use the term the high holidays. There's Yomim Noroim, which really probably refers to Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, the days of awe, AWE, which would refer probably primarily to Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur more than to Sukkot, but really it's a theme, it's a continuum. So Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot is a series, and they're very much related, and they go in order specifically, and they happen in the order that they happen for a reason, and each one is a stage in a process. And we're going to really dive sort of deeply into the nature of time now for the next 6-7 weeks, the nature of time, and really what's special about this time, and how and why we can really make the most of this time to achieve things and to really change our lives ahead, to change certainly specifically next year. And to, if we make significant change over the course of a year, that translates obviously into a new direction and an immeasurable change over the course of time. So I want to start by talking just about the nature of time and what it means, because this happens a lot, especially in Chassidus, especially when we go deep, when we, talk about things that are discussed in the texts of mysticism in Chassidus, in Kabbalah, in Pnimiyas HaTorah, where we talk about things being a special time, and this time is predisposed for something, and then a different time is predisposed for something else. I want to talk about what that means, because there are different ways that we could describe what's going on and what this really means. And one of the ways we can look at that is at saying that Hashem is sort of in kind of, let's say, different moods. So if there's a time of the year when Hashem is in a particularly kind mood, or a particularly giving mood, or a forgiving mood, or an open mood, that's going to affect everything that happens to us, because everything that exists comes from the Creator, comes from God, comes from Hashem. And so Hashem's moods are going to translate obviously into having an impact on everything that happens, and ultimately affecting our lives. And that's true. But it's actually a lot more than that, and I want to go a little deeper into a little bit talking about the nature of time and what it means when we say that something's a special time that's predisposed for something in particular, whatever it is, because we say different times of the calendar, different times of the year are predisposed to different things. So for us, and I've talked about this once actually in one of the previous shiurim, but I'm going to come at it from a bit of a different angle this time. So we think of time as just being this absolute thing that exists, and it's just the way it is. Time passes, there's the present right now, there's the past which already was, and there's the future, and then the present quickly becomes the past as we move forward in time, and that's just the way things work. By definition, it's just the way it is. And that's true in a sense for us, because we exist inside of time, the same way we exist inside of space. So we exist inside space, we exist inside time, and our reality is very much defined by time and space. There's north, south, east, west, up, down, forward, back, right, left. That's real. And wherever we are in the universe, there's going to be a right and a left and a forward and a back and a up and a down. And at any point in time, there's the present, there's the time that we're in right now, then there's whatever amount of time has passed, and then there's the time ahead of us, the future. And that's the way it is. Time keeps moving and there's nothing we can do about it. It's just, that's the way that reality works, is with time. We exist inside of time, and it's true that we exist inside of time. But not everything exists inside of time, right? One of the names of the Creator, one of Hashem's names, is Yud Kei Vav Kei, also known as Shem Havaya. One of the meanings that's represented by this name, it has all the letters Yud, it has a Yud, a Hey, a Vav, and a Hey. It has all the letters you need for the words Haya, was, Hoveh is, and Yihiyeh will be. So you have every letter that you need to spell all of those three words is present in this name of Hashem. And what that represents is one of the reasons that this is a name of Hashem, or the name of Hashem works out this way and is spelled this way, is because it has a message for us. That Hashem has within him the past, the present, and the future equally. Now that doesn't make any sense to us. Right? Because the past and the present are separate. The past happened before the present, and the present happens before the future. The future happens after the present, which is after the past. They can't all be at the same time. Right? The definition of time is that it passes, and the definition of moments in time is that they occur at different times. That's what time is. That's what time means. Time passes, and every moment in time exists outside of and exclusively to every other point in time. Yesterday can't be at the same time as today, because today's today, it's not yesterday, it's not tomorrow. And 1 o'clock can't be at 2 o'clock. 1 o'clock in one time zone could be at 2 o'clock in another time zone, but 1 o'clock can't be at 2 o'clock in the same time zone, because 1 o'clock and 2 o'clock are different times. They can't be at the same time. By definition, that's what time means. The same way that 2 points in space can't be in the same place, because that's what space means. It's different positions, different locations, different places, and each one exists independently of all the others. But that's true of us because we exist inside of time. Right? Hashem created time and space, and then inside of time and space are like the operating system. Right? On a phone, on a smartphone, you have, whether it's an iPhone or an Android or Windows phone, whatever it is, the phone has an operating system, which is like the whole software that the phone runs on. And then you install apps on the operating system. And if you have an old operating system, all the apps are going to run slowly and be more buggy because the software, the environment that it's running in, isn't working efficiently. And then if you upgrade the operating system, you upgrade the OS, then all the apps can run more effectively and efficiently because they're in an operating system and OS that works properly. So the operating system, all the apps work inside of the operating system. So the better the operating system, the better the OS, whether it's the iOS or Android OS, whatever it is, the better the OS, the better the apps are going to function, because that's what they exist inside of. So we exist inside of time and space. But Hashem doesn't exist inside of time and space. And this is hard to wrap our heads around because we can't imagine, we can't visualize what it means to not live inside of space, to not live inside of time. Because we were designed to exist inside of time and space. So our minds were designed to relate to existing inside of time and space. So that's all we can imagine, all we can visualize, all we can relate to. We can't relate to, like I said, we can, if someone says, try to imagine no space at all. Try to visualize it. It's impossible. You can visualize empty space with nothing in it, but it's still going to be three-dimensional. It's just going to be empty space. Right? But try to imagine a lack of space. There is no up and down. There is no right and left. It's impossible. It's technically impossible to visualize because our minds were designed to exist in space. So to us, it seems like space is an absolute. It's the same with time. Try to imagine there not being time. It's impossible. You can imagine nothing happening in time. You can imagine time and space being empty, but in our visualization, time will still be passing. There will still be a previous moment and a present moment and a future moment. Can't imagine there just not being time. Because as far as we're concerned, there can't not be time. Because we were created after time was created. We were created to exist inside of time. But God created time. Hashem created time. The same way Hashem created space and the same way He created us. And we actually know exactly where in the process of creation time and space came into being. It's well before we did. So to us, there's time, there's space, right? The manufacturer of a phone, they build the phone, the physical phone, then they load the operating system onto the phone. Once the phone has an operating system, they then install the apps. Right? But if you have a phone, just the object that's a smartphone, and it doesn't have an operating system, you can't put apps in, they have nowhere to go. They're designed to work inside of the operating system. It's So it's the same thing with us. We're designed to exist in time and space. There has to be time and space first. Once time and space are created, then we are created. The universe is created inside of time and space. So time and space do very much define our existence because we exist inside of them, but Hashem doesn't. So if Hashem is the creator of time, Hashem, the same Hashem that created yesterday also created today and creates tomorrow. The same Hashem that created 6 p.m. also created 6 p.m. in 1 second and 6 p.m. in 2 seconds and 6:01 and 6:02 and 6:03. It's all the same God. And that same one God, that same creator, that same infinite divinity was there before time existed. So each of those points in time exists within the same God and was created by the same God, and that God exists, Hashem exists before time and outside of time. Time exists inside of Hashem, as opposed to Hashem existing inside of time. Is this making sense? It's a bit deep and intense. So, because Hashem created time, it's the same Hashem in every point in time. So, Yud Kei Vav Kei, that name of Hashem is past, present, future. Was, is, will be. Same Hashem. But not for us. For us, every point in time is different. Now, where do points in time come from? Every moment in time is a creation. Hashem created. Hashem created this moment in time that we're in right now. And Hashem created the next moment in time, the next moment in time, and the previous moment in time. And Hashem created the time of yesterday, and the time of today, and the time of tomorrow. And every moment in time has a nature. First of all, it has a nature in fact that it's a moment in time, and it's not a point in space. Space and time are two different things. So space was created with the nature of space. Time was created with the nature of time. And every moment in time has its own nature. Now, it could seem like Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, it's all the same. The nature of the time is the same. It's the same thing, it's time. Time passes, it's a moment, a moment, a moment. And they just keep on going, moments in time follow each other, and they're all really essentially the same thing, unfolding one after the other. And it could seem like that, and like we define Sunday and Monday and Tuesday, well, we need to be able to refer to times and tell people when to meet and when things are going to happen, so we give moments in time or periods of time which we call days, we give them names, but it's arbitrary, it could be anything. One could reasonably argue that that's the case, but it's not the case. Every moment in time has a unique nature. And for example, generally speaking, right, the way that we behave on weekdays is different to the way we behave on Shabbos. The halachas, the laws, the rules, the customs are different on weekdays than they are on Shabbos. And the reason for that, in addition to the fact that that's what it says in the Torah, that's how God told us to behave, that God has told us that if we want to live a life that's aligned with our purpose and aligned with divinity, that's the way to live. Why? The reason is because the nature of time during the week is different to the nature of time on Shabbos. So the way that's appropriate to behave in the kind of time that the week is made up of is different to the way that it's appropriate to behave in the kind of time that Shabbos is made up of. Because Shabbos and weekdays are different periods of time, different kinds of time, so the appropriate behavior is different. Why? Because the nature of weekday time is different to the nature of Shabbos time. And it's not only Shabbos and weekdays where this is true. It's true at all different points throughout the year. So when we talk about the fact that this is a special time, that the high holiday season, which really starts at the beginning of the month of Elul, that time has a special nature, a different nature. It's a special time with unique potential. What that means is that the operating system that we exist in, the time that we exist in, is different to the time of the rest of the year. It's like the whole operating system of the universe is upgraded, it's different. Everything runs differently. Everything's running more efficiently. Everything's running more effectively. Why? Because the whole operating system, there's a framework that the universe exists inside of. We exist inside of time and inside of space. And this time of this season of Elul and Tishrei, of the high holidays and the time leading up to it, and Sukkot, is a different kind of time. We're in a different framework, a different operating system, which means that everything we do has a different potential. The whole, just a random analogy, a metaphor that just popped into my head is, walking through air versus, if you're in a swimming pool and you try to walk through water. The experience of walking through water is very different to the experience of just walking through the air. Completely different. Right? You're in a different environment. So everything is different. And this goes deeper. This is not just physical movement through air versus through water. This is the actual environment, the framework which we exist in. The nature of the time is different. It changes. So everything we do throughout this season is different, and it has a different impact. And I want to talk about how and why. And it's not just one thing for the whole season. There are different subsets. There's the month of Elul generally, and then there's Rosh Hashanah, and then there's the time between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and then there's Yom Kippur, and then Sukkot. And we're going to talk about each of those. So when we say that this time is a special time with a special potential, it's very real. The time that we exist inside of going forward through the month of Elul has a different nature. It functions differently than the rest of the year. Now, any time that we have something special, we have a special tool, we have a special, whatever it is, access to something unique, if we don't know what's unique about it, we can't really make the most of it. Right? When we have something special, the better we know how special it is, the better we'll be able to make the most of it. So if we can understand what's special, and we'll start with the month of Elul, what's special about the time of the month of Elul? What is the special nature of the month of Elul? Once we understand that, we'll be better able to understand or to know how to make the most of it. Very practically. When we start sort of with deep and esoteric and spiritual ideas, but we're going to bring that all the way down to very practical, simple ideas about day-to-day life going forward, because that's ultimately what matters, and that's where things make a difference. So in the month of Elul, there's something, I'm just going to start with the terminology, then we'll talk about what it means. There's an expression, a terminology in Kabbalah, in Chassidus, in mystical Judaism, that are called the Yud Gimel Midas HaRachamim, the 13 attributes of mercy. What does the 13 attributes of mercy mean? It sounds nice. Let's talk about mercy. Very simply. Right? What does mercy mean? When someone has mercy, mercy is not the same as kindness. Kindness means I am being kind to you. I want to be kind. I want to do something nice. Mercy is different. Mercy means you really don't deserve something nice right now. You really deserve a punishment. You really deserve for me to be strict. You really deserve for me to say no. But I'm going to have mercy. I'm going to be merciful. I'm going to say yes, even though the person doesn't deserve it. Right? That's the difference between mercy and kindness. Mercy means being kind even when the person doesn't deserve it. Now the question is, why would a person have mercy? Why would we be kind to someone when they don't deserve it? When they've done something that they don't deserve it themselves because they've behaved in a way that it's not appropriate for them to have this kindness. Maybe they've hurt us as well and we don't particularly want to be kind to them. Now if it was just that they hurt us and we don't want to be kind to them, that might be, a little bit narrow-minded. But it could be a situation in which someone really doesn't deserve for us to be kind to them. So why would we be kind to someone if they don't deserve it? And if they've hurt us and we don't really feel like we want it and we know that they actually don't really deserve it, why would we be kind anyway? Why would we have mercy and show someone kindness even if they don't deserve it? Ultimately, what it boils down to is, if there's something deep down inside of us that sort of wakes up and says, you know what, let's overlook the rules. Let's overlook what they deserve. They really don't deserve it. We'll give it to them anyway. Now, naturally speaking, we're not going to be equally merciful to everybody. If there's someone that's very close to us, if we have a very dear friend that we've known for 40 years and they've been, always been there for us, and we have a very deep relationship with them, or it's our parent or our child or our sibling, a deep friend, whatever it is, anything like that, those are people that we're going to be quicker to have mercy on than someone else. But if there's someone who we love deeply, we're much more likely to say, you know what, you really don't deserve it. You really don't. I'm going to do it anyway. We're much more likely to say that to someone who we have a deep and close relationship with, relative to just some random stranger. With a random stranger on the street, we're going to be less likely to say, you really don't deserve it, I'll do it anyway. We're more likely to say, you don't deserve it, period, that's it. Right? Why? Because if there's someone to whom we have a close relationship, someone that we love very much, someone that we're very close to already, that person already has a connection to deeper places in our soul. We've already formed a deep bond with that person. They're already connected to places deep within our soul. So when it comes to, deciding how we're going to behave towards such a person, they really don't deserve it. They messed up. They don't deserve it. They don't deserve it from us. They don't deserve it, period. But because they're connected to a place in our soul that's so deep that it's beyond whether or not they deserve it, it's beyond the rules. Right? When it comes to ourselves, do we sometimes give ourselves a break? Do we sometimes let ourselves do things that maybe it's beyond the rules, maybe we really shouldn't, maybe we really don't deserve it? Of course we do. We all do. We all give ourselves space sometimes, or give ourselves leeway that we don't really deserve. Because that's how much we care about ourselves. That's how close we are to ourselves. So if we feel very close to someone else, we'll also be more inclined to give them a break and to say, you know what? I'm going to have mercy. I'm going to say yes, even though the answer should be no. Even though you deserve a no and not a yes, I'll say yes anyways. Right? When we know someone very well and we care about them and love them deeply, they're already connected to deep places within our soul. And so they're already connected to places within our soul that are prepared to override the system and override the rules and say, you really don't deserve it, but I'll do it anyway. That's what mercy is, and that's where mercy comes from. Now, sometimes we could have mercy on a stranger. Why? Because who knows why? Maybe it was just the mood, maybe for some reason we were making a decision about someone and they really didn't deserve something, but somehow, for some reason, this deep place within our soul was awakened, and we said, you know what, you really don't deserve it, I'll give you a break, even though you don't deserve it. That's mercy. Sometimes that place within our soul wakes up, but it's much more likely to wake up for someone who already has a connection to deeper places in our soul, right? Which is why when it comes to people who we really love, we tend to give them a lot more leeway and to have a lot more mercy, to be merciful, to be forgiving, even in situations which they don't deserve. Why? Because they're connected to us deep down inside. So when we say that the month of Elul is a time in which Hashem's 13 attributes of mercy are in effect, what that means is that the time of Elul, during this month of Elul, the time that we exist inside of, the time that the framework that we exist inside of, the operating system during this month of Elul, right? And like we said, every moment in time is a creation. It's created by God and it comes from God. The same way that every object that exists comes from God, and the same way that every person comes from God and every idea comes from God, every point in space comes from God and every moment in time comes from God. And different moments in time could, so to speak, come from different places within God. And the moments of time that the month of Elul is composed of, every moment of during the month of Elul is a moment in time that comes from deep, deep down within Hashem. Deep down in a place in Hashem where Hashem says, you know what? you've got me. You've got me all the way deep down in my soul. I'm prepared to overlook the rules. I'm prepared to override the system. I'm prepared to have mercy and to say yes, even if the answer should be no. And this is the time inside of which we exist for the whole month of Elul. We exist inside of time that comes from a place deep down within Hashem that says, I'm prepared to say yes, even though it should really be no. The deepest places within Hashem. So, what that means is that during the month of Elul, everything about this month makes it easier for us to be forgiven, to have mercy, to turn things around. But what does that mean practically? We all know there are things about our lives that we wish we did better at, right? Everybody has them. And the specifics vary from person to person, but we all have things that we know we could do better at and things that we should do better at. And you know what? It's not easy to change. It's not. It's not easy for anyone to change. Human nature is that we're very susceptible to forming habits, and it's very difficult to break out of. We're very susceptible to learning to appreciate things that bring us instant gratification. And they're very, very hard to break out of and very, very hard to change. Bad habits are hard to change. Becoming accustomed to whatever it is, it can be very hard to change. Now, that doesn't mean we can't change, but the fact that we're able to change doesn't mean it's easy, to say the least. It can be very, very difficult to change, but not all times are equal. During the month of Elul, everything about this month, the air that we breathe and the water that we drink, the time inside of which we exist, is a time that comes from a place within Hashem that says, I'm prepared to overlook. Any effort that you put in to try and change now will have a disproportionate effect, will have a much greater impact, any effort that you make now will have a much greater impact than it would have any other time of the year. Now, we can change any time of the year. We can change any day of any week of any month. We can. But can still be very difficult. But the degree to which it's difficult in the month of Iyar and Sivan and Tammuz and Av is different to the degree to which it's difficult in Elul. So if we put in however much effort, usually during any other time of the year, we put in however much effort we put in, we'll be able to change our behavior a certain amount. We'll be able to get ourselves on track a certain amount. We'll be able to redirect our souls and to realign who we are inside a certain amount. And it's difficult and it takes a lot of work to make progress. During the month of Elul, when the time itself comes from a place within Hashem that's so deep that Hashem says, even if the answer should be no, I'll still say yes. I have mercy. I say yes even if the answer should be no. Then when we put in effort to changing who we are, we put in effort to realigning ourselves and our lives and strengthening our souls and strengthening our commitments and behaving and getting our lives going more in a direction that we want to, Hashem, during this month, the time itself that we're in is a time that says yes, even when it should be no, yes. So the effort that we put in now during the month of Elul is much more likely to bring us much more success than the same amount of effort would any other time of the year. We can connect to Hashem more deeply, more easily during the month of Elul than we can during other times in the year. And there's a beautiful metaphor that the Alter Rebbe, the founder of the Chabad philosophy and Chabad discipline, describes for the month of Elul. And he says that the month of Elul, the metaphor that he gives is of a king. And not a king today, because kings today are mostly symbolic. Most of the kings and queens today are symbolic, largely. But once upon a time, 150, 200 years ago, a king or a queen had all the power. They could do anything they wanted to anyone they wanted to do it to. They wanted something, they got it. Their word happened. Right, so if you wanted something, if you had a way to make a request of the king or the queen, that was your best bet, because they could give it to you. If it was physically possible, they could say yes and they could let you have it. Right, they had all the power over everything. So if you wanted something, your best bet was to try to get it from the king or the queen, if there was any way you could get in touch with them, but it wasn't easy. Right, to get an audience in front of a king or a queen, a couple hundred years ago, when kings and queens were, the old school kings and queens of history, it was almost impossible to actually get in front of them. And if you could manage to get an audience, chances are you're going to have to wait a couple of years until you actually get to go in and see them. It was largely impossible for most people to be able to actually get in front of the king and queen and to ask them for something. And that, in a way, that's kind of what it's like during the year. We ask Hashem for things. We ask Hashem for blessing. We ask Hashem for help. We ask God to grant our requests. And we say, what, I want to try to turn around. I want to try to make a difference. I want to try to get myself back on track. I want to try to get my life once again better aligned with my purpose and with the universe and with why we're here, with Torah, with mitzvahs, with creation. It's not, Hashem always hears our prayers and Hashem's always willing to respond, but it's not so easy. It takes a lot of effort to pray authentically and to get through to Hashem. That's the reality. The same way that it's very difficult to actually get in to be able to talk to a king or queen back in the day. Even today it would be in the places where there are kings and queens, but nowhere near as difficult as it would have been a couple hundred years ago. But then the metaphor continues. The Alter Rebbe says, kings and queens don't sit only inside their palace always forever. Sometimes they travel. Now, generally when they travel, with a lot of protection and under heavy guard, and it might be even harder to get through to them than when they're traveling, mostly because the guards around them are probably very cautious, and they're traveling and they know it could be dangerous and they're going to be extra cautious, and you'll never get to talk to them. But kings and queens are human too, and once in a while they just might want to go for a stroll. They might want to just go for a walk without all the baggage and without, all that much security. They just want a break. And they might go incognito. They go and they, don't do their makeup that day, or they do it differently and do their hair differently and wear very casual clothes, just wear a pair of jeans and a t-shirt and go for a walk outside in the park. Presumably with some protection, but less protection, and maybe the protection is a little more discreet, because they just want to go for a walk. They're not interested. They want to breathe some fresh air. Now, on a day like that, when the king and the queen are going for a stroll through the park dressed casually, you could walk right past them and have no idea that you just walked past the king and the queen. You wouldn't even know. Why? Because they're not surrounded by heavy guards. They're not wearing their crowns and their capes and all, all the drama that goes with it. There's no drama. You come, and if you would come and see the king or the queen in their throne room in the palace, it's very dramatic. Tons of drama. First of all, there's the difficulties with arranging. And imagine you finally make an appointment and you wait 2 years. And then you get there and you walk in and you come to the walls around the palace, and it's already beautiful and magnificent, and the guards pat you down and finally let you in, and then they walk you through the courtyard to the palace, and it's like things are getting more beautiful and glamorous and as you go. And then as you walk in, there are more guards everywhere, and the drama builds up, and the closer you get as you travel, it gets more and more decorative and more beautiful, and more guards everywhere and more drama. By the time you get into the throne room in front of the king or the queen, you might even forget what you came for. You'd be so overwhelmed. It's just drama everywhere. It would be extraordinarily dramatic to experience such a thing. And again, we can't even really experience that today, Because kings and queens of the stature that they had historically don't really exist anymore. But just imagine the experience and the drama and how overwhelmed a person would feel by the time they get into the throne room and standing in front of the king or the queen. It would be extraordinarily dramatic. And you'd be very overwhelmed, probably shaking, possibly forgetting what you even came there for, and you'd just be like, super dramatic, super overwhelming. In contrast, if you meet the king and the queen when they're in casual clothes and they're going for a stroll through the park, there's no drama. There's no drama to the extent that you could walk past them and not even realize that it's the king and the queen. You walk past them and you say, hey, good morning, and keep on walking without even realizing you just said good morning to the king and queen. There's zero drama. Why is there zero drama? Because they're not in the palace. Palace creates drama. They're not surrounded by tons of guards. The guards are maybe a little more in the distance and discreet and watching carefully, but keeping their distance. So there's nothing creating any drama. So, on one hand, it's very easy to not even realize that they're the king and the queen because there's no drama. But that also means the fact that they're hard to recognize and there's no drama and it's not overwhelming also means that they're going to be a lot more accessible. The same way that you could walk past them and say, hey, good morning, you could also say, hey, good morning, you know what? Do you mind? I just have something really important to ask. And they're probably in a more relaxed mood. They're out going for a stroll in the park, and if they're in a good mood, they might say, hey, yeah, what's up? So we kind of have a couple of opposite things going on at the same time. On the one hand, they don't have all the drama that comes along with being in the throne room in the palace, to the extent that you might not even realize that it's them. But if you do get lucky enough to know that it's them, right? If someone tells you, hey, by the way, I heard the king and queen are going to be going for a stroll through the park today, and no one really knows, and they're going to be incognito and they're going to be dressed casually, but if you want something, you might actually be able to get to them now, unlike the rest of, when they're in the palace, you basically can't get to them. That would, if there's something that you want, that would be a very good opportunity to make sure that you're at the park and make sure that you see them and you walk past them and say, hey, good morning, do you mind, sorry to interrupt, if I just ask you for something? And if they're in a good mood, they can see you right then and there. Right, during the year, usually, they couldn't even practically say, oh yeah, come in, let's hear what you want, because you don't even get to talk to them. You don't even get access to them. You have to get through 100 different layers of bureaucracy and people and secretaries and guards and everything else before you can even think of talking to them. And here they're right there, available and accessible. And this is a metaphor for the month of Elul. Hashem is always available. God, the Creator, is always available. And we can always ask, and we can always pray, and we can always ask for help. And we can always make an effort to turn things around and to improve and to change the direction of our lives. And when we make an effort and try to change the direction, etc., we can pray and ask Hashem for help, ask the Creator for help. We can. But during the month of Elul, it's as though metaphorically God is casual, relaxed, going for a stroll in the park, and right here, right next to us, without protection, without guards, without secretaries, without walls and gates, and right here available for us to just say, you know what, I'm really working on this, can you help me out? And when the king and queen are going for a stroll in the park, they're probably more relaxed and more in a good mood, and they say, you know what, sure, we have a couple minutes, why not? No pressure. We're just enjoying the scenery anyways. It's a nice place. Let's hear what you have to say. Let's hear what you've got. And that's exactly what the month of Elul is. It's a different kind of time. It's a time that comes from a place that's so deep within Hashem that Hashem says, yes, I got you. Maybe you deserve for the answer to be no, but even if you do, it's still yes. That's the nature of the time that we exist in the month of Elul. And this place within, deep down within Hashem, that makes him say yes even if it should be no, it's open, it's accessible, it's casual, just strolling through the field. And this is true. This metaphor doesn't only compare the month of Elul to the rest of the year, it even compares the month of Elul to the high holidays, to Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur are dramatic, and they can be a little bit overwhelming, and we can feel very inspired. You walk into the throne room in the palace, you're going to feel inspired to the degree of overwhelm. Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur can be inspiring, and they can be dramatic, and they can be somewhat overwhelming. The month of Elul is not dramatic or overwhelming. It just feels like the rest of the year. The same way that the king and queen walking through the park seem like just any other person, but they're not. The month of Elul is like that. It's when the king, the queen are incognito, look like anyone else, but they're not. So they're minus the drama, minus the overwhelm, but at the same time actually more accessible than any other time. During the month of Elul, it doesn't feel as dramatic as Rosh Hashanah. It doesn't feel as dramatic as Yom Kippur. It's not overwhelming. But if you walk through the king and queen in the park, if no one told you that they were going to be there, you wouldn't know that it's them. You walk right past and you won't even know they're there. You have access to the king and queen. They're in a good mood. They're accessible. There's no guards around them. But you don't even realize that it's them because they're in jeans and a t-shirt. And so what happens? You miss out on the opportunity. If you're lucky enough to know that it's them, you can make the most of the opportunity. And that's exactly what the month of Elul is. The month of Elul isn't as dramatic as Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and it's not overwhelming. It almost feels like any other time of the year. It's like the time of Elul, it's like it's dressed in jeans and a t-shirt, like the king and the queen in the park going for a stroll. It feels like any other time. And if we don't know what it is, we could miss out on this opportunity. But just like the king and the queen have just as much power to grant you things when they're in the park as they do when they're in the palace, they're still the same king and queen. They still have the same power, the same influence, the same authority. It's just that you wouldn't recognize it because they're in casual clothes. Same thing now. We have the same access to the same power and the same forgivingness and the same compassion and the same mercy that is in effect on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. The month of Elul, we have a full month of that. And it's even in some ways more accessible than it is on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. But it's easy not to realize because there's no drama. It's not inspiring. It's not overwhelming. It's the power of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur dressed up in casual clothes. That's literally what it is. Just like the king and the queen dressed in casual clothes in the park. Same power and authority, but you would walk right past them without even knowing unless you're lucky enough to know. That's exactly what the month of Elul is. We have the power of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur for a full month, for 30 days. We have that access to that power of forgiveness and correction and compassion from Hashem. We have full access to that for 30 full days. But it doesn't feel like that. It's dressed up in casual clothes. It's dressed up in a way that it seems just like any other time of the year. And if we're not lucky enough to be informed and to be aware, we could go right through the month of Elul and miss out on that opportunity. The same way that you could walk right past the king and the queen in the park and miss out on the opportunity because you don't even know that it's them. If you're lucky enough to know that it's them, you'd have to be a fool to not take advantage of that opportunity. And the month of Elul is the same. We have a full month of access to the power of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And another thing to keep in mind is, when just going back to the metaphor of the king, the queen, imagine the king and the queen are, going through and some secretary brings them a list of 1,000 people that want to come and see them and they have to figure out their appointment schedule for the next year. And it's a bunch of names, a bunch of random names. And then they see your name on the list and they say, oh, I remember when we were going for a stroll in the field, you came to say hi. And you made a point to come and see us even though it wasn't inspiring and even though it wasn't dramatic and even though it wasn't in a palace and it didn't look fancy and exciting. And even though we weren't, wearing our crowns and our robes and everything else, you still came to see us. You still came to say hi and you still came to ask for something then. We remember that. You come to the front of the line. You come in first. And so when it comes to Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and everybody comes to Shul on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and everybody's inspired. Why? Because it's an inspiring and dramatic time. But if we showed up in the month of Elul, and we said, you know, Hashem, I know that you're here in the month of Elul in the same way you are in Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. It's that this is a time that comes from so deep down inside of you that it's a time that is filled, that is designed with mercy, with you saying yes, and we're going to show up and make an effort, even though it's not as exciting in Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Then when Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur come, Hashem says, oh, I remember you. You showed up in the month of Elul. You made an effort even when it wasn't exciting and dramatic. I got you. Let's hear what you have to say. And so when we think about, you know, how powerful and inspiring the 49 hours of Rosh Hashanah are, and how powerful and inspiring the 25 hours of Yom Kippur are, we all get inspired on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. The month of Elul doesn't feel that inspiring, but we have the same access to the same divinity, the same divine power that we tap into on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. We have access to tap into that the full month of Elul. We have a whole month of being able to make an effort and have Hashem say, yes, I'm going to make your effort be even more successful than it deserves to be. You deserve 40% success, I'm going to give you 100% success. You deserve, 10 steps of progress for your effort, I'm going to make you experience 1,000 steps of progress for your effort, for the same amount of effort. Why? Because it's a time that comes from deep within Hashem, the place that mercy comes from. So the month of Elul is an opportunity to effectively have a full month of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. It's not as exciting and it's not as dramatic, but it has the same power. We have access to the same power the whole month of Elul that we have access to on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And so this month of Elul that's about to begin is a full month in which we can, if we look at it as a full month of the power in Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur for a whole month, if we can really take that seriously and really sort of see that the time that we're in for this month is different, it has a different nature. We're in a different operating system, we're in a different environment, we're in an operating system of mercy and of yes, even when we don't deserve it. It's minus the drama and the excitement of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. It's the king and the queen in casual clothes, but they're still the king and the queen. It's still the same Hashem. It's still the same power of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and we have it for a full month. And this is really a time when we can, and practically speaking, when it comes to Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, they're powerful and inspiring days. But how much personal work can we actually do with ourselves over one day, over 2 days? Some, right? But personal development, working with ourselves, working on our souls, working on our character, working on our personality, working on our behaviors, it takes more than 2 days. So Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, we can access that and tap into it and get inspired and make commitments and New Year's resolutions. And then we have to, really count on allowing that to power us through the year. But on Elul, in the month of Elul, we have access to that power and that energy and that revelation and that connection to divinity for a full month. This is a month in which we can really spend 30 days working on getting ourselves more inspired, getting ourselves more connected, getting ourselves more aligned, strengthening our souls, getting our lives more on track and in the direction that we really want them to be. And a month is a serious chunk of time when we can really make progress and really grow and develop. So we have a full month of the access and power and revelation of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur throughout the entire month of Elul. And just like the king and the queen in the field, The fact that we don't feel inspired during Elul the way we do on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur doesn't mean there's any less access or any less power or any less impact or influence or revelation. It's the same king and queen. It's the same access to divinity, the same revelation, the same power. It's just incognito, it's undercover, but it's there. And if we show up and make that effort and really work to strengthen ourselves and get ourselves on track and get our lives I wouldn't say redirected, because maybe they don't need to be redirected, but tweaked and adjusted and improved through the month of Elul. When Rosh Hashanah does come, when the king and queen are in the throne room and it is exciting and dramatic, they say, I remember you, you showed up through the month of Elul, come to the front of the line, let's hear what you have to say. And this is the time that we're about to enter. This is the time of the month of Elul. It's a full month of that access and revelation and power. And it's an opportunity that, honestly, most people are not really aware of what it is. Right? When the Kabbalists, when it says in Chassidus and Kabbalah that the Yud Gimel Midas HaRachamim, Hashem's 13 attributes of mercy, are in full gear and accessible and revealed for the whole month, that's the same thing it says about Yom Kippur. That's the revelation that exists on Yom Kippur, which allows us to clean our slate and turn everything around. We have access to that for a full month. It doesn't feel like it, because life largely looks the same in the month of Elul as it does any time, but it doesn't have to. If we're lucky enough to know what the month of Elul is, we're lucky enough to at least be informed about what sort of opportunity we have at our fingertips for this month.